Before we start talking about asymptotes, we first need to do a little bit of review. So let's start with a brief review. For number one, we have f of 3 equals -2. So what does this mean? When you see f of 3 equals -2, we need to remember what this represents in terms of our function. So f represents the function name. So our function is called function f. So this is just the function name. The piece in parentheses right here is the x value. And the piece at the solution here is the y value. So what this is saying is when we have function named f, if we were to use the x of 3, so x equals 3, then that means that would lead us to a solution of y equals -2. If we look at number 2, let's review a limit. We have the limit as x approaches 2 of f of x equals infinity. What this means is if you have a graph, as you are getting closer and closer to 2 on the x, so as x goes to 2, then the y value is getting closer and closer to infinity. So y goes to infinity. So it might look something like, if we have a graph, it might look something like, here's 2. So as x is coming to 2, y is going to infinity. Notice there's no little left and right. So we want to do on both sides. So it might look a little bit like this, just as an idea for the graph. Let's try the next one. Number 3 says the limit as x approaches 1 with a little plus right here of f of x equals -infinity. This means that as x goes to 1 from the right, so you're approaching 1 from the right, then y is going towards -infinity. So a quick sketch on that one. If 1 is right here, so as you're approaching 1, it's going to curve down towards -infinity. So just an idea of what that might look like. Number 4, the limit as x approaches infinity of f of x is 5. That means as x goes to infinity, then y goes to 5. So a brief sketch of what that might look like. Whoops. Let's try that again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 might look like that. So as x goes to infinity, so let's make it look like this. Looks like it's going to curve off and level out at 5. So here we have the limit as x goes towards -infinity of f of x equals 3. So this means that as x is approaching -infinity, our y value is approaching 3. And then the last one, well, this could look like, let's draw a quick sketch. So there's 3. -infinity goes this way, so we could draw the same idea. And then leveling off at 3. There we go. So just a quick sketch. Now, this is by no means what it absolutely looks like. This is just an example of what it could look like. So then we have the last one, the limit as x approaches 1 from the left of f of x equals 4. So this means as x is approaching 1 from the left, that y is approaching 4. So if x is approaching 1 from the left, I'll put it right here. So we'll put 1 right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So maybe as it's approaching 1 from the left, it looks like this. And then who knows what it does from the right, but as it's approaching 1 from the left, y is approaching 4. So just as a little bit of review, we have a couple different types of asymptotes. We have horizontal asymptotes and we have vertical asymptotes. And if we're trying to look at our different types of asymptotes, then we need to make sure that we understand what's happening. So for a horizontal asymptote, this would be horizontal. Horizontal goes this way. So a horizontal asymptote, this is going to be when you have a limit as x approaches infinity or -infinity. Of some value for f of x, so some function, and it's going to equal some L. And L is some y value. So L is some y value that would be in your equation. So for example, right here, as we're approaching negative infinity, we'd have a horizontal asymptote at 3. Here, as we're approaching infinity, we'd have a horizontal asymptote at 5. So L is going to be some value, 2, 7, 12, whatever. When you have a limit as x is approaching infinity or negative infinity, if your graph levels off, then that's going to be your horizontal asymptote. And if you have a vertical asymptote, this is where you have some value. So we have the limit as x is approaching a, some value, some number. X isn't going to infinity or any negative infinity anymore. It could be a from the left, it could be a from the right, but x is approaching some number. And you have your f of x still. And the answer to that limit will be infinity or negative infinity. So that's like what we had for number 2. Remember I drew that graph? We had x approaching 2, and we said it looked like this. So this would be a vertical asymptote at 2. Here we would have a vertical asymptote at 1. Let's see, do we have any others? No, we don't have any others where it's going to infinity. So those would be our 2 examples. So vertical means up and down, horizontal means sideways, and the asymptote means that you're approaching that value, but you're never actually going to touch it. So let's look at an example here and see if we can identify some of the different components relative to our limit. So for number 7, we have some function f whose graph is given. There it is, it's right there in red. State the following. All right, here we go. So we need the limit as x approaches 2. Well, 2 is right here. So the limit as x approaches 2, as we come from the right, it's going to infinity. As we come from the left, it's going to infinity. So the limit as x approaches 2 is going to be infinity. In part B, we need the limit as x approaches -1 from the left. So -1 is right here. So coming from the left, we're coming this way. Looks like it's going to be infinity again. Notice these are vertical asymptotes. Let's look at the next one. The limit as x approaches -1 from the right. So coming at -1 from the right, we're following this piece down. So it looks like if we follow this piece down right here, it looks like we're going towards negative infinity this time. And then we switch over to our potential horizontal asymptotes. So all 3 of these are vertical asymptotes. Let's look at part D. So as x is going towards infinity. So going towards infinity is right here. We're going out, out, out. See how it looks like it's leveling off right here at 1? So that's going to be a horizontal asymptote. And let's look at the next one. As x approaches negative infinity. So see how it's wiggling and it's wiggling and it's getting closer and closer. It looks like it's going to level off right here. And that looks like it's leveling off at 2. So that is also going to be a horizontal asymptote. So part F, find the equation of the asymptotes. Well, let's do this in 2 pieces. Let's do the vertical first, and then we'll do the horizontal second. So where are these vertical asymptotes? Well, look at your graph. Where does it look like you could draw a straight vertical line and it would be approaching the graph from the different sides? So for example, right here at 2, it looks like I could draw a straight vertical line right here, and the graph is approaching infinity from either side. So we're going to say vertical asymptote is where x equals 2. And then right here, it looks like I could draw a vertical asymptote and we're approaching infinity or negative infinity from either side. So -1. And we have that in our work up here. As we approach 2, our value was infinity for the limit, vertical asymptote. As we approached -1 from either side, our value was infinity or negative infinity, vertical asymptote. So let's look at the horizontal now. So horizontal asymptote, now we're looking at left and right. So horizontal asymptote, we're looking at our lines going across left and right. It looks like it's going to even out right here. So this right here would go through y equaling 2. Oops, I forgot the y equals. Let's do that first. And this right here looks like it would go through y equaling 1. So y equals 2 and y equals 1 would be our horizontal asymptotes. Let's try another one. For the function f whose graph is given, state the following. Okay, here we go. we have the limit as x approaches infinity. So we're approaching infinity. So that means we're looking to see, could this be a horizontal asymptote? Let's look. X is approaching infinity right here. So that looks like y is approaching 2. So that would be a horizontal asymptote. Let's look at the next one. X is approaching negative infinity. Here it is. Negative infinity would be this way. It looks like we are approaching -2. There we go. So again, looks like a horizontal asymptote. Now we have no way of knowing if this graph is going to do something like this right off the edge. We don't know. We can't decide that. We don't have that information. All we have is what we're given. And from what we're given, it looks like it's going to continue like this. So we have to do the best that we can with what we're given to do these estimations. So now we have the limit as x approaches 3. So now we're looking to see if we can have a vertical asymptote. So 3, so let's see here, we have 2, so 3 is right here. Looks like it. Looks like we're going to be able to draw that line right there. So that looks like we're going to approach infinity. So we found a vertical asymptote. And then as we approach 0, so right here, that looks like we're going towards negative infinity. And then as we approach 2 from -2, and we're approaching from the right. So we're going like this. Here's -2 right here. That looks like negative infinity again. So now we need to see if we can find our vertical and our horizontal asymptotes. So our vertical asymptotes are going to be where we have these vertical tangents, where we're approaching infinity and negative infinity. So it looks like we have 3 of them. And so it looks like our vertical asymptotes are going to be -2 for this one, 0 for this one, and 3 for this one. And it's okay that this part right here doesn't look like it's going to positive infinity. We have the negative infinity from the part approaching from the right. So that's okay that the part approaching from the left is not going towards infinity. It's still going to be a vertical asymptote from the part approaching from the right. And let's try our horizontal. Our horizontal asymptote looks like we're going to have 1 right here. And it looks like we're going to have 1 right here. So it looks like those are from our infinity and our negative infinity. And it looks like that is going to be when we have y equaling -2 and y equaling 2. And so we have our vertical and we have our horizontal asymptotes.